Hi, welcome to Fiber Hustle. My name is Chip, and this is the Side Hustle Quilting Edition. Today, we're continuing working with Alison Glass's Trinket Sew-along, blocks 9 and 10, lines 9 and 10. So, grab your favorite beverage, and let's get sewing. Okay, we're working on lines 9 to begin with, and it's just 4 different fabrics, but we're going to make it extra. All right, so I've already cut out my fabrics using the Martelli template. This is the 5.5 block, and these 4 gorgeous colors are really going to shine in this simple block. Now, all I have to do is press before we get going. And you know what? What the heck? Let's press them all at the same time. Let's save a step. So we're going to stack them. Grab my trusty little iron. And get out that aggression. All right, so that should be good. And you know what? Sometimes I notice that the cotton likes to curl when I iron it. So I'm definitely going to give it a press on the second side. That should do it. Okay, let's go to our light box. And we're going to be working on one of these sides. So we're going to work on 1 and 2 to begin with. The really nice thing about these floral patterned fabrics is that they don't have to be oriented other than just lay them down. There's no direction to them, so really we can't go wrong. All right, I think I'm gonna do pink and yellow and orange, and actually this is more of a cherry. So let's go with the cherry and yellow and orange and pink. I'm gonna work with orange and pink first. I'm gonna call my pink, oops, we gotta turn the pattern face down. Number 1, face up, and I'm going to try to get a lot of flowers in here. Great. And then I'm going to go with number 2. That goes face down because it is a pattern. And again, I want to hope for lots of flowers to go in that section. And I think, why not? Let's do that. All right, next step. We grab it and we're going to pinch it. And let's go to the sewing machine. Okay, I'm going to drop my needle, drop my presser foot. I've already got it, the stitch length at 2.5, but I want it to a 2.0. So I'm going to lower that and give her a locking stitch. And lower the speed of the needle, and away we go onto the first line. By now, you are an expert at sewing a straight line on your paper piecing. Give her a locking stitch, and we know it's going to be perfect, so we're going to go right to the iron. Yep, that looks good. Give her a press, and once we do that, we need to give her a little trim. Okay, the only thing that I'm really going to trim, because 1 and 2 don't have any more fabric being added to them at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and slice off the second half of this block. So on this first half that we've already sewn, I'm just going to trim it down right on that trim line. I am going to bring this first piece back to the light box because I want to consider that when we're sewing the second piece, I don't want two pinks next to each other. So I'm going to make sure that one is going to be yellow and two is going to be this cherry pink. All right, so I'm going to leave one and then, making sure that I'm sewing on the back of the pattern. And then two is going to be, I'm going to get plenty of flowers. Okay, this is going to be number 2. And let's take it to the sewing machine. This block couldn't be more simple. It's kind of nice when the way that Alison Glass has mixed up the Trinket Sew-along so that one day you're doing something more complicated and the next day it's a little bit more smooth sailing. And when you're doing these more simple blocks, it gives you an opportunity to focus on color like we are today. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and press that seam down. There we go. Let me get my pressing board. Oh my gosh, those yellows are almost exactly the same. Okay, so now we've got that really well pressed. Give it a quick press on the back, and it's time to start trimming along. One thing that you could do is, I see that I have a lot of this extra yellow and this pink right here, and it's well more than a ½ inch. So actually, I'm going to protect the fabric that we really want to keep. I'm going to flip both sides over, and just as though we were preparing for additional fabric to come along, I'm going to trim my quarter-inch seam, and that way keeps the project clean. Great. Now we have one half of the block ready. It doesn't matter which side we're working with, whether it's going to be the left side or the right. One of them's got to go down. And let's go ahead and trim this guy. That way when we bring everything together, it's nice and clean. So again, I'm protecting this big piece of fabric that is actually part of the project. And we're going to do another fold. And then add a quarter. Great. So now we have another easy half to work with. Yeah. Okay, so before I marry these two sides together, I think I'm going to trim off the excess from the inside of this side. That way, when I go to pair them up, I have plenty of visibility for where our sew lines should meet. Okay, so the idea is both of them facing, so the fabric's facing, and then we've got a little arrow, which you can probably see right there. That arrow is on both sides, and we need to make sure that we're matching that up perfectly, which happens to be the intersection between our 4 pieces of fabric. And as long as we meet that, everything else will just fall in place. Great. So I'm going to take it to the sewing machine, and I'm going to start working on our join line. Okay, so I've got it held down with my needle, and then I'm just going to make sure that the fabric is right on top of the paper where I cut it on all 4 pieces are exactly in line. We're almost there. Okay, I'm going to hold that taut and sew. Okay, we've already accomplished half of that line. We're coming to the end. Perfect. As I always say, production's always worried I'm going to mess up. So, I don't think he's got anything to worry about today. It matches perfect. All right, what we do need to do is reduce some of the bulk. So I take my finger and I just move those pieces of fabric from either side of that seam out of my way. Move. All right, and on the other side. And then when I go to press it, it'll be a lot easier to get the iron in there. All right, bring over my pressing board, grab my iron, and smooth it out. If you find any places that are not opening up, then just iron it into submission. But this isn't a lot of layers, so there really shouldn't be that much issue. All right, what I'm going to do next is flip it over and give her a nice press on the top side. And look at that. Very cheerful. I love these 4 colors together. I personally am not big into florals, but these colors are just doing it for me. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love Alison Glass pairing up with Andover Fabrics, because they really just have beautiful saturated colors. Okay, I have pressed this like it owes me money. Now, all we have to do is trim the outsides, and this block is incredibly done. So we're going to follow our cut lines. 1, 2, 3 cut lines, Speaking of cutting, I've cut a beautiful block and got a beautiful haircut. All right, we are done with block 9, lines 9. Now we're going to move on to block 10, lines 10. Stick around. Okay, we're back, and we're continuing on with block 10, lines 10. In this block, we've got 3 different pieces that make up this block, and with a couple extra tools, you can make a total MacGyver out of it. You see this little circle in the middle? It doesn't have to be that tough to get a truly perfect fussy cut. Let me show you how. We're going to be working with these 3 pieces, and that center block was that circle that I'm talking about. Now, all I do is grab my trusty calipers. I don't even have to turn them on. I go to my fabric, and all I have to do is look for something that's going to fit within that space. Now, I know that this is a square, so I've checked both sides, and as long as whatever I'm trying to fussy cut fits within that, we are good to go. Now, in this other block, we've already used a circle, so I'm going to go for something different this time. I saw earlier there was a cross. Yeah, here it is. This cross could be just what we're looking for. Man, we have to be really good, but I think we can do it. It's exactly going to fill that small block. Let's do it. I'm going to grab my cutting mat. And before I commit to that piece, let's see if there's another one that is maybe on the border. That way I'm not going right in the middle of the fabric. So there's one, there's two, and it looks like, yep, I'm going to commit to this guy right here. Yep, let's do it. All right, so I'm going to grab my rotary cutter, and I'm just eyeballing it. I'm not making a big deal of it. Just getting the outer perimeter is all we need to do. Okay, we've got our little square. Now, let's go back to the light box, and actually I could even make that a little smaller. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so now I pretty well have isolated that cross, and I know that it is going to fit right inside. Now, we don't need the calipers, but this time we're going to grab two more tools, actually three. I've got tweezers, a stick of Scotch glue, and a Q-tip. Now, all I'm going to do is take my Q-tip, get a little bit of glue onto the Q-tip, and I'm going to glue the back side of this fabric. See why I need tweezers? Because I can't even grab it, it's so small. And you might be wondering, hey, isn't that going to gum up my machine? I don't want to put glue in there. No, this dries pretty quick, and I'm not going overboard with the amount of glue that I'm going to be using. And if anything, the glue would go to the needle, not into the machine. All right, so I'm going to place my cross right there, and I can faintly see the sew line, and we may just have to make a little bit of adjustment, but not much. All right, I'm going to flip it over, and yeah, I can see through the light box, I can see that my little cross is exactly in the center of that, which really looks great. Now, the nice thing about using glue too is that it dries white and it'll wash out. And if you launder your quilt, the glue will come out in the wash. So this is a really great tool to use for a very sticky situation when you're trying to get precision piecing. All right, so with our purple cross in place, now I'm going to use some contrasting pink to fill these two stripes on either side. Going forward, I'm actually going to use this pink in all three blocks. That way, I'm going to have a cross mark going right through the center. So this is more fabric than I actually need. So I could probably get all four pieces out of this. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and grab my cutting board, and I'm going to grab my add a quarter ruler, and I'm going to just cut strips. One, and let's go to the second one. And let's get two more. Okay, that's going to be all the pink fabric that we need. And actually, this one last piece was way more than I needed. Okay, get rid of that piece. Now, I've got 4 strips ready to go. Take them to the pressing mat so that they lay flat as we're sewing. And then we're going to go ahead and attach fabric 1 to fabric 2. All right, at the light box, we are going to attach 1 to 2. So we want to overhang on 2, and all the fabric is actually right now resting on 3. And I'm going to pinch and flip. Okay, so I bring my needle down, bring my presser foot down, and let's give her a locking stitch. Yep. And you see, we still have white. That's perfect. So we're right at the edge of that white cross, which is exactly what I wanted it to do. Now, just like we held down the cross, I'm going to go ahead and hold down, give her a little snip. I'm going to hold down this pink fabric in place because when we go to sew the entire block together, I don't want this little piece to be flopping all over while we're trying to line things up. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and grab my Q-tip and my glue and repeat. Now, some people might think that gluing is cheating, but consider this. I'm not replacing sewing with gluing. I'm replacing pins with glue. When you've got pieces that are so finicky, you may not want to put a pin in it because the pin could actually bulk it up and you may not be able to line it up as easily. All right, so we're just holding that down for now. I'm going to give it a quick little press on top to help it dry. And you don't even know that there's glue under there. Now we're ready for the second strip of pink. So I am going to repeat the process. Great. All right, so we've already pretty much finished the first strip. And you'll notice that my lines are not perfect, but again, the only thing we're worried about is the sew line, which all the extra fabric that's on either side of it, it won't matter. All right, we're gonna give it a little press. And I love it, that cross is still visible. Come back and give it a little more glue. Good catch. And we're almost there. Once we get the this piece glued down, then we will give it another quick press. And then I'm going to cut this whole piece out of our way and we're going to move on to the corner. Okay, we've got one strip that is not moving, and that's exactly what we want. Come over to our cutting board and get this guy out of our way. There's one. Two. Now you notice I'm very careful as I'm cutting. I want to be as precise as I can possibly be as I'm cutting. In sewing, there's only two other things besides the actual sewing that can make or break your project. The cutting and the pressing. Those two things you cannot sacrifice on. If you do, you get lumpy messes, things get distorted. You don't want that after all the trouble that you've spent. Now we're going to go to our first corner, and we're going to use this one again, and that's going to be, again, our pink strip that we've already cut. I'm going to get rid of the extra because I won't need that. And we're going to glue it in place. Okay, so we've got this. And it may look like I'm slathering it on. I am using this sparingly. It's just a temporary assist. And you know what? While we're at it, why not do it to this piece as well? Because it's going to be the same exact thing. So, grab our glue and repeat. I'm telling you, this glue will last you forever. If you're only using it for paper piecing, it really does last. And it's really cheap at the dollar store. Or Amazon. I like to call it Chipazon. Aaron likes to call it, there's another box out front. Alright, so we clip those. And now we've got our 2 strips finished. And we're going to be ready for our feature fabric with the patterns on it. And one thing that I like about this fabric is that it's really, it only goes in 2 directions. It either goes facing you or facing away. It doesn't go on the other side, so it's really easy to work with. All right, so I've got this huge piece, and I don't need all of it. So let me just trim that so that we can place that on our number 2. We want to go, and I did it again. All right, here's a huge, stupid mistake I made. I glued to the right side of the pattern, not the wrong side. That's a huge no-no, because how else are you going to be able to see what you're sewing? Because these are simple pieces, I'm going to roll with it. You know, sometimes you make a mistake and life happens. Okay, so I'm going to flip this over. I can still faintly see the line, so it's not a complete deal breaker if you're sewing on the wrong side. Okay, let's go and sew. Now, because it is harder for me to see, I am going to go much slower because I want to ensure that I'm catching the line that I'm supposed to be sewing. But I gotta be honest, it's like sewing blindly. Let's see how I did. Okay, when I flip it over, I caught my line perfectly. Great, so I'm not going to cry over spilt milk. Now, we'll take that to the pressing board. And so far so good. All right, let's grab some more fabric. Here it is. And we're going to repeat the process. Let's trim this down. See, you can learn from my mistakes. People say, oh, you make it look so easy. I make making mistakes look easy. Okay, so now, again, it really doesn't matter which direction I'm going to sew this in. This actually could use a press. The fabric was wanting to curl. So, muy importante, you need to You need to make sure things are pressed. And I'm doing this the easy way. I'm doing this with a sewing machine. One of my new friends through the Trinket Sew-along is Johan. He's in Australia, and he's actually doing half of his blocks by hand. He's actually hand sewing. I'm like, God bless you. And his blocks are really awesome. Okay, so we've got this piece ready, and I'm going to give myself some overhang and back to the sewing machine. All right, so now I'm going to land there, and okay, I see my line. Now what's funny is that it's even harder because when I have my contacts in, I can't really see close. So if there's any mistakes on this, I'm just going to say it's because I was wearing contacts. Look at that. How's that for a beautiful stripe? Okay, so now I'm going to give her a press and pray that this is all going to line up. Okay, so do I have enough fabric? I think I do. I'm going to trim this even further so I can use this piece of fabric onto the next side. And here's my ruler. I'm going to go ahead and trim this now. Great. And there's that. And there's that. Could even trim it a little better. Oh, it's locked. There we go. All right, that looks better. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so now you see that this triangle is starting to take shape. Since I already did that one side, let's go ahead and trim this other side. Oh, you know what? There's another idea that you could do. Now, since I am kind of going blindly, what I could do is take this and actually fold it so I know where that sew line is. Yeah, that's good. And then this line. I could take that so I can fold it, and now instead of a printed line that I'm going after, I can just go right on that fold line and use that as my trim line. So one thing that I've learned since I started sewing is that how to fix the problems that I create. And really, I mean, once you start learning how to fix your own problems, that's when I think you're really a sewer. Okay, that looks pretty awesome for the first half of the block. We're going to set that with our first stripe. All right, we want to grab our second piece. And I've still got two pieces of pretty decent sized fabric to work with. Let's go back to the light board, and we know that we want to sew this fabric to 1. So that's piece 1 to piece 2. And I don't like these extras. All right, so now I'm going to I want my fabric to land like that. We're going to have the printed fabric going in all directions, but I need to ensure that I can cover the entire block. which I think I can do. Let's look and see. We have the directions. We have that direction. So we want the fabric to go up and down like this. That'll work. All right, so I'm going to save this piece for that. So why don't I just go ahead and sew that now? Will that work? Nope, that's too short. That might work. Okay, so I'm going to lay this down because I know it's going to flip over, and my main concern is that I'm going to have enough for seam allowance and to have it cover. And that will happen so long as the bulk of this fabric, the widest part, is covering here. So then it'll all flip over, if that makes sense. All right, so I don't right here, pinch, and back to the sewing machine. Great. I think we did it. Okay, so now I went ahead and flip it over and give it a press. And then we move on to our last piece of feature fabric. And we want to put on this guy, and this one's going to be real easy. There's plenty of fabric to go around, so I'm going to come over and back to my line. And open it up, and ta-da! Looks really, really good. Okay, so we've got both of those ready, and just like we've trimmed this first piece, we're going to go ahead and trim the second. I don't need any more glue. Okay, come back and we're going to trim. And as long as we take care to really notice where those lines are, right there and right there, I think we're good. Oh, rotary cutter. Yep. And I could even afford to trim just a little more. I can kind of see that line better. Great. And we're going to come back and do the same thing. Find our line. Making sure that it's the outside line, our cut line. We don't want it to be too small. Woohoo! Now cut our third line. And what's really nice is that I'm noticing that in the pattern itself, there are some notches that we could use. So right here, she's included in the pattern a little like a dog ear notch, and that will help us as we're lining up our pieces of fabric. Now, it's hard for me to see because, of course, I sewed things on the wrong line. So I got to be really careful as I'm making those cuts. Great. Okay, so those are cut. And there's our second piece. And let's cut those ears. There's one. And here's 2. Now, there's definitely an order to this. Let me give that a press. And it's looking really good. So you notice my lines are shaping up and they're going to meet. I've done everything to the right size, so that really makes me happy. And I've got all of the directions of the fabric running this way, so it's not running this way. So everything's going to look really sharp. All right, now we're going to take our first piece and with right sides together, we're going to sew this piece to this piece. And I've got a seam there where we're matching the inner block that we've sewn with the new stripes that we've made on the triangular pieces. As long as we take care to line those up really well. I'm not even going to pin that because I want to make sure that I don't distort anything. So I'm going to use a little clip just to hold things in place. Then I'm going to come back to the machine and we need to sew on our line. And this is why I glued down that pink fabric on the strip, because there's a lot of loose pieces here. And I want to make sure that everything lines up. So I have my sew line, I'm dropping my presser foot, and away we go. Okay, I'm getting close to my clip, so I'm going to let that free. And while I've got the machine stopped, I am going to make sure that I've got everything else lined up the way it needs to be. And then I'm going to grab my tweezers and just hold things in place. I love my tweezers. All right, so our first midsection seam is done. And look at that. Our triangle meets right at the corner of this cross. That's what needs to happen. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a press before we get any more sewing done. And this block is really shaping up. So yeah, you may get a step backwards or something like I did, but fear not, you can always recover. And people still think you're MacGyver. All right, now we're going to repeat the same process. We want to make sure that our seams are going to match, which it looks like they do. Yes, I'm happy with that. And I'm going to grab our little clip again. And then, now, you see, as I lay this down here, I want to make sure that I'm lining everything up. Both sides of the paper are on the same line. Now, I can go back to sewing. I find my sew line, which is very faint. There we go. And away I go. Okay, I'm coming up on my clip. Take it out, and then while we're stopped, make sure that all my layers are even, using my tweezers to hold everything in place. And follow that seam line, that sew line. And I think I did it. All right, moment of truth. Ha ha. I sure did it. All right, give it another press, and we are almost done with our block. I am super thrilled. I did this blindly. If you're on Instagram, Erin and I like to show stories, and today I was jamming out to Call Me Maybe. I don't know who it is. Who is it? Carly J. something. Epson, Pepson. I'm not a millennial. I don't know. I'm Generation X, and, you know, more people are dying than I understand who are popular on the radio, so... Call me maybe. Okay, now we've got everything really well pressed. I'm going to do some final trimming. And one cut. Two. Three. Can we have four? Four. This is gorgeous. You've got your cross in the center. It looks like you were this stellar rock star. And if you do it this way, you are. So, thanks for joining. This has been Block 10, Lines 10. Stay tuned next time and come back. We're going to do Shapes 1, which is going to be Block 11. I think so. I have to check the syllabus. But come back next time and we'll get to have more sewing fun. Bye for now.